Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Advocates are warning that proposed cuts in President Trump's sweeping budget bill will impact more than 42 million Americans. That's how many people rely on the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP. Now, SNAP benefits are federally provided funds. They help people buy groceries. Last week, the House Agricultural Committee approved cuts of more than $300 billion to SNAP over the next decade. As part of that deal, lawmakers are also hoping to get rid of waste and require states to shoulder some of the costs for the food assistance program. Joining me now to talk about what all of this is going to mean for us here in New York is Joel Berg, the CEO of Hunger Free America. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Errol.
You've been through a lot of different cycles. You also used to work in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, so you've seen this from the other side. They are cutting, as we just reported, and I think everybody understands that. Why are they cutting, and can it be done with minimal harm to individual families?
They're cutting to pay for tax cuts to the rich and corporate agribusiness welfare. That's the bottom line. They were going to cut $230 billion. That's billion with a B. And a lot of people don't even understand what a billion is. That's 1,000 millions. So they were going to cut $230 billion just to pay for their tax cuts. And then some of the agribusiness lobbyists said, hey, what about us? So they added another 60 or 70 billion dollars just to pay for more bailouts, not to small family farmers, but huge operations, which, by the way, don't really have work requirements on them. And in New York City alone, this will mean something like $12 billion in cuts over the next 10 years. Wow. So it would be a tsunami in pain. And these would be the biggest cuts implemented in American history. Bigger than in the Reagan era, bigger than welfare reform.
$12 billion over a 10-year period. That's over $1 billion of cut from SNAP benefits here in New York City each year.
That's correct. And if you add together the charities of the Food Bank for New York City and City Harvest and our organization, Hunger Free America, and our New York City affiliate, Hunger Free NYC, and some of the bigger food pantries and soup kitchens in New York, that's a small decimal point compared to the dollar amount of food that would be cut by these pending eviscerations of food.
In New York, and I imagine some other states, there are, I would think, laws and certainly customs against allowing for mass starvation, right? So if this big amount of food aid simply goes away, it's going to have to be made up from someplace.
Perhaps. As you know, the state constitution of New York is one of the unique state constitutions that does have an economic right embedded in it. And that's why courts have ruled that we do have a right to shelter in New York, but no one has applied that to the right to food. And we had a major fight this year, over a few years, to get $350 million in the state budget for universal school meals. And I really applaud Governor Hochul for leading on that. But this is over 3 times that. So by no means am I sanguine that the state of New York would pick up the remainder of this.
So now how they're doing this in Washington is worth talking about for a minute, because what they're framing as, well, we want to push this back down to the states. But that really just kind of disguises what is just a flat-out cut in a lot of ways.
That's right. States will either have to cut benefits or raise taxes. And elected officials certainly don't like doing the latter. And it's important to point out this will devastate food businesses in New York. Bodegas, the small corner grocers we have, the mid-sized groceries, and even some big box stores we have in New York. There are 8,000 retail establishments in New York that accept SNAP. In Congresswoman Malliotakis's district alone, there are over 600 stores that accept SNAP. So they're saying the states would pick up part of it. They are coming up with these really bogus work reporting requirements. It's really work reporting requirements, not increasing work. Sometimes they force people to leave work to go stand at a government office to prove they're working. Just insane. They would eliminate the exemption for child raising. And you're old enough to remember, I'm old enough to remember when someone attacked Ann Romney, Mitt Romney's wife, and said she didn't work. The right went nuts. Well, of course she raised kids. But when it comes to poor people, and there's all sorts of class and racial politics underneath these attacks, when it comes to poor people, raising kids is somehow really a dodge out of work. But for everyone else, it's real work. And in the committee hearings, they couldn't explain what people would have if they had children with disabilities or what would happen over the summer.
And I mean, part of the savings or whatever, the cut, is enhanced work requirements, right? I saw that up to 64 years old, you're expected.
That's right. So
if you need food aid, you're expected to go out there and hustle for a living.
Yeah, so if you work in a steel mill and all the tariffs didn't work and your job goes away at 63 and you can't get a job within 3 months, you lose your food. And totally ignoring age discrimination. So they are forcing work requirements on parents with kids and work requirements which already exist up to age 59 to up to age 64. And again, rich people's programs, the mortgage interest deduction for your vacation home, no work requirements.
Right.
Tax breaks for your private jet or your yacht, no work requirements. I'm for a responsibility for all society, and most low-income people want to work and do work. But this picking on the low-income people just because they're the easiest target is really ridiculous. And this is going to hurt blue districts, red districts as well as blue districts.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that because, you made a point of mentioning Nicole Malliotakis is the only Republican-held district in New York City. It's going to be a problem for her politically. It's going to be a problem for a number of Republicans. And there may be enough of them to either change or even sink this bill, right?
They certainly can easily sink the bill with just a few votes. Not to pick on a representative here in New York City, but this guy Rob Bresnahan, a freshman, supposedly moderate Republican from Eastern Pennsylvania, said he opposed the cuts, put out a press release, he opposed the cuts. These were promises made to the people of Northeast Pennsylvania, and where I come from, people keep their promises, he said. 2 weeks later, 2 weeks later, he voted for those very cuts he condemned.
Right.
And so I wish Congresswoman Malliotakis fought as hard for low-income people as she's fighting for the SALT reductions. That's a complicated issue. But they were going to raise it to exemptions of up to $30,000, which is already pretty wealthy. And many of her colleagues are saying that's not enough. So again, this is all about Robin Hood in reverse.
Are there enough groups that do the same kind of work that you do in enough districts that approving the cuts as laid out here would amount to political suicide for the people in a lot of districts?
Not enough. Bob Dole once said the reason we have hunger in America is poor people don't have a pack. And frankly, not everywhere does every hunger group speak out against their elected officials. They're worried about their contracts. They're worried about their tax status. I'm worried about my tax status and my contracts too, but you've got to speak the truth in a nonpartisan manner, point out when people are voting to increase hunger. So, part of my long-term strategy is to raise the money, and anyone can go to hungerfreeamerica.org and donate, but we really need to build a grassroots movement to hold people accountable because a lot of people say this is a nonpartisan issue. It used to be a nonpartisan issue. It should be a nonpartisan issue. But if they're cutting to take $300 billion with a B of food away from children, seniors, working parents, and veterans, they're pro-hunger, and we've got to say that.
In our last minute, will there be a compromise, you think, at a lower number, perhaps?
I don't know. The great irony is this bill's being sunk so far by the far right, who's further far right than the rest of the far right of the current House of Representatives. I mean, even Newt...
They're saying you haven't cut enough, right?
Yeah, even Newt Gingrich didn't propose work requirements for health care. That's how extreme these guys are.
Okay, we'll see how all of this works out. Thank you very much, Joel Burke. Great talking with you. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.